last session of the day on how Aerospike 8.0 will make life easier for application and platform teams. We have once again on stage Mr. Evan Cummack, Chief Product Officer Aerospike, coming onto the stage.
All right, so first of all, thank you so much for having me here in your beautiful city. I've been in Delhi, in Mumbai yesterday, well, 2 days ago in Bangalore, and everyone's just been so friendly and so nice and so accommodating, so thank you so much. I very recently joined Aerospike. We're going to talk about a little bit about what's landing in the next few weeks, actually. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what's launching in the next few months. And then we're going to talk just a little bit about how we think about kind of product and product prioritization for the long run. We are, at this point, a couple of weeks away from Aerospike 7.2. And Aerospike 7.2 will be the first version of Aerospike to launch since I joined the company, so I'm extremely excited. And there's a couple of things I'm particularly excited about. These are fairly nuanced technical features, but I think that for the developers and administrators in the crowd that are already using Aerospike, you'll understand these fairly well. The first feature that I'm really excited about is called Active Rack. And to understand Active Rack, I think it makes sense to take a step back and actually understand what it means when Aerospike talks about rack awareness, also sometimes called multi-site clustering. So what multi-site clustering is really about is about minimizing the chances of damage to your data or loss of data when you have underlying infrastructural outages, whether it's hardware or software, network, whatever that is. And you do that by making sure that each of your data partitions are available on top of each of your kind of major pieces of infrastructure. So maybe it's a data center, maybe it's an availability zone. And the way that rack awareness works is you have your first rack here, and this has some masters, some replicas. You have your second rack. This has also, again, this thing's not really working very well from up here. Maybe this will work better. No, that was weird. Sorry. You have also some masters and some replicas, and then you're running your smart clients, and your smart clients are writing basically 50% of their writes to each location, and you guys may be already familiar with this. What it means is that your master partitions and your replica partitions are perfectly distributed between your sites, and then using the Fabric protocol, the sites are exchanging replicas with one another via replica writes. So this is how things have historically worked in terms of multi-site clustering. What we're introducing in Aerospike 7.2 is this notion of an active rack. And the way that an active rack works is you have one site, which has your all of your masters, actually. You can do 100% of your writes into this site, and then the site or the cluster will do replica writes into your second site. And so your second site will be all replicas. But importantly, both sites still have one copy of every single partition. And what that means is that all of your replicas are in the second site, always ready to become active, but you're no longer doing these cross-site writes from the clients themselves. And that really gives you three benefits. The first is you're going to see about a 33% reduction in your inter-zone network egress. So that is to say, if you're running on-premise, you're going to just have less traffic, less congestion. If you're running in the cloud, you're probably going to save some money as well. And that's just by that sort of simplified network topology. You're almost certainly going to have improved write performance. You're definitely going to have write performance that looks more similar for all of your writes, since they're all writing to the same rack. And this one's a little less obvious, but you're actually going to have a much more simpler deployment and maintenance techniques for your strongly consistent databases. And the reason is that you no longer need the tiebreaker node, if folks are familiar with that. But because you don't have 50% of your masters in each location, you can sort of allocate at any time which of your racks or sites should take over in the event of a cluster split. It means that you can bring an entire site down to do maintenance very simply and without that tiebreaker node, because you don't need 51% to get a majority. You have 100% of the master partitions already. The second feature I'm excited about for Aerospike 7.2, and again, this is landing in the next few weeks, is what we're calling XDR frequency control. And I'm sure that a lot of people here are familiar with XDR. Actually, I'm interested. How many people here are familiar with XDR? Okay, so it's like half. So like half of the people in this room are kind of probably Aerospike Power users. That's great. So XDR stands for Cross Data Center Replication Protocol, and it's kind of our wholesale network protocol for clusters to talk to one another and for clusters to talk to things like connectors, so for putting data onto data pipelines or into Kafka and queue message queues and whatever else. And what we're introducing in Aerospike 7.2 is something that, again, I'll take a step back and I'll kind of explain how XDR works today. The way that XDR works today, you have an XDR source, which in this case is going to be an Aerospike cluster. And let's say that you have a record that you write to the database, and I'm using very long time frames here to make it sort of human relatable, but let's say that you write it at 0 seconds, you update it at 1 second, and then you update it again at 2 seconds. And the way that XDR works today is the cluster will publish an XDR event, and if that is acknowledged, let's say 2 seconds later, the next XDR event that gets published will actually be reflective of version equals C. So we essentially skipped an entire version. So the system on the other side has no knowledge that version B ever existed. And this is an efficient way of keeping two systems in sync. What it's not particularly good for is ensuring that you have a picture of where the database was at any given moment. And so one of the reasons that we're so interested in investing in this and building this is so that we can start to think about richer and more featureful backup and recovery solutions in the future. Because as you can tell in this scenario, any system on the other side of this, maybe a backup system, restore system, would actually have no hope of ever recovering to version B. And so in Aerospike 7.2, we introduce, in addition to version skipping, which is the default today, we introduce a notion of a maximum interval, which is to say I need a picture of every record at a maximum of a certain amount of time, say 5 minutes. And then we also offer this option to ship all versions, which is back pressure will actually come through the database and into the clients if any of the versions of the records are not able to be handed off to the downstream system. So that is Aerospike 7.2. Just as a reminder, active rack, XDR frequency control, and we're expecting this to land in September, which, as you know, is the month we're currently in. So we're talking about just a few weeks here for Aerospike 7.2. If you want to get it early, come and chat with me, chat with your account manager, but otherwise you should expect to see this on our blog and in our social in the next few weeks. Later this year, we have a bigger release, which is Aerospike 8.0. And to understand Aerospike 8.0, I think it makes sense to go like a little bit back in time and see where we've come from as a company and how our roadmap has gotten us to where we are. So 2012, the company formerly known as Citrus Leaf, now known as Aerospike, you can see in the marketing, very focused on key value store, web scale, fast. This is a lot of language that's sort of around caching and persistent caching. And what we found is that because the system is so reliable, so fast, people start using it for all kinds of stuff that maybe represents more of like a traditional enterprise class, mission critical database workloads. And so we followed that with our roadmap. And through the years, you see that we released things like XDR, which we just talked about, collection types, strong consistency, of course, multi-site clustering, which we also talked about, and our Kubernetes operator, which is actually our fastest growing product and has people are loving the Kubernetes operator. And this theme of bringing features to market that allow us to address these more mission critical database type workloads continues in 2024, continues with Aerospike 8.0. Very specifically, what we're releasing in Aerospike 8.0 is multi-record transactions. It's probably clear what it does by the name. It's not always a great place to be creative when you're building databases, but multi-record transactions and the TXN or transaction object that we're adding to our API basically allow you to do what you're probably guessing, which is to create a transaction and to have that transaction cover multiple records in the database and to read and write to those records in such a way where if anything fails, the whole thing will be able to be rolled back. Pretty obvious. But this is a very, very much requested feature for everything from the sort of more traditional like financial type use cases to the type of use case that I want to show you in a minute. So I was flying out here, I guess, on Sunday, and I don't know how many of you have flown from the west coast of the United States, but it is a 26-hour flight, which is a very long flight, and I was thinking, what could I build with the preview release of our Aerospike 8.0 to kind of highlight what it does or how you should think about the value that's inherent in it. And one use case that came to mind is that every now and then, whenever there's a huge event happening somewhere in the world, like a big concert or a big sporting event, you see these news stories around some website crashing or some other. And part of the reason for this is you have this workload that is very write intensive, very read intensive. One of the things that people tend to do is to use a eventually consistent cache in this architecture. And that can result in things like being able to add a seat to your shopping cart, but then not being able to check out. Or you check out, but then some minutes or hours later, you get a notification that you don't have your seats. Or you try to book 2 seats for yourself and for your wife, and you end up with just a seat for yourself. So this is a really interesting use case, actually, for multi-record transactions. And so as I started putting together the sample code that we will share with developers for the Aerospike 8.0 beta release, I set my sights on building something like this. And I call it TicketFaster. Any likeness or similarity to a real corporation is purely coincidental, I assure you. But the way that this application works, let's actually just take a look. So you have a list of events, as you can imagine. You open up an event, you can see seats and add them to your cart and so on. But what's actually happening in the background is we're leveraging, maybe I can make that a little bigger. We're leveraging multi-record transactions to ensure that we do not update the shopping cart without also updating the seat. So we can't guarantee necessarily that someone will definitely be able to get a seat into their cart, but we can guarantee that if they can get a seat into their cart, that it's theirs and that they will be able to check out later. And the syntax is pretty straightforward. You create a new transaction using this transaction object, and from there, it's really, we do a couple of operations on our model data, and we basically hand off to something that just looks like Aerospike. So we're just using regular kind of Aerospike stuff, but at the end of this, we commit a transaction. And the committing of the transaction is basically just calling this commit method, which is provided by Aerospike 8.0, and that will either succeed or it will throw an exception. And there's a reason I work in product, which is I'm just catching a generic exception here. Please be nice. But when that happens, we have the option to do whatever we want with that data. So in my demo, I'm not actually doing anything with that data. If it fails, I just abort. But of course, you could use that to present something to the user and say, hey, sorry, this failed, or explain it in any other way. So this is the code that we will ship with the beta. Beta is something where right now we're in a state of preview, and I'm going to give you some details in a minute as to how you can be part of that. Of course, it is Aerospike, so it's actually pretty fast, and I can go ahead and simulate some traffic, and if my assumptions are correct, yeah, you'll see that some of these ended up in carts, some of them ended up purchased. We also use multi-record transactions to make sure that if you want 2 seats, you don't end up with 1 seat, which is great. And that is what we're going to ship with the early access to Aerospike 8.0. Just as a sort of reminder of like what we saw here, we're using 1 record to model customer shopping carts. We're using another record to model. Actually, we're modeling at the row level, but this ensures that we don't get into a situation where there's an ability to put something in your cart, not an ability to purchase. Again, our target for Aerospike 8.0, our target for multi-record transactions is going to be this year, but we do have some folks playing with it already. In terms of clients, today we just have the Java client. We'll have a Spring Data client very soon. Before we go to general availability, we'll have all of the clients that we have as standard for our Aerospike product. So you'll have Go and you'll have Python, etc. But if you want to get your hands on this early, there is a web form, and you can go here. You can fill in your email address. You can fill in your company name, and I will endeavor to do my best to work with you, work with your account manager if you're an existing customer, and make sure that you get early access to Aerospike 8.0. So just to recap, everything we talked about, and it is a little odd to be announcing 2 versions of a product at the same time, I guess. I don't remember Steve Jobs ever announcing the iPhone 3 and iPhone 4, but we do have 1 minor release, 1 major release. Minor release in the coming weeks, Aerospike 7.2. That's going to give you access to the active rack functionality, and it's going to give you access to the XDR frequency control. And then, throughout this year, we'll have the preview program, the beta program, and general availability for Aerospike 8.0, which will give you access to multi-record transactions. And of course, it'll have the features and capabilities of Aerospike 7.2 in it as well. So I kind of mentioned that how we got here was by moving from being used in these kind of cache-like or sort of casual read-heavy use cases to these more mission-critical system of record, if you will, use cases. And part of the reason that we find that so compelling is not that we want to be the best database or we want to be the best cache. It's that we have a technology that actually allows you to simplify your stack. It allows you to kind of compress those 2 things into one system that is known to work well together. You're no longer kind of managing things like cache invalidation yourself necessarily. And this is reflected in our future priorities as well. So without getting into too much detail beyond kind of the end of the year, we very much want to make continued investments in observability. We're at a point as a company where our software is being used in environments that are extremely high scale. And this is something that we've grown into. And we also need to grow into making sure that we make the investments in observability and in kind of automation and management to allow those really high-scale environments to exist and to be a pleasure to maintain. We will keep investing in enterprise-level data management capabilities, so think about things like security, think about things like who has access to data across an application system. These are things that, of course, are important as you move into these mission-critical data workloads. This is something I'm extremely passionate about, is really investing in the application development experience. And we know that I was, like I said, in Delhi and Mumbai the last few days, and I talked to these people running data platforms inside of enterprises, and they say, I wish that more of our application teams would choose to use Aerospike because they like running Aerospike that much. They get such good economics out of it. And so we really want to invest in making the application development experience great, so that not only startups and independent entrepreneurs and whoever else really wants to use Aerospike, but so that also these application teams inside of enterprises are really enthusiastic about building on Aerospike. And we want to continue down this path of native. I say native, it doesn't really mean anything, but sort of multi-cloud optimizations that are specific to an extent to the clouds that they're going into. So we have AWS Graviton support, for example. We released support for Amazon EBS as a storage tier recently in the last 6 months. And so this is something we want to keep exploring. We want to give you freedom of what cloud it is that you're running on. We want to give you the convenience of a fully managed cloud database without being locked into any individual cloud vendor or any individual cloud database. And these are really our kind of what I think are our major priorities going forward. Of course, there's room in here for other things, but thematically, I think in my first quarter at the company, these are the things that when I talk to customers just consistently come up one after another. And that's it. Thank you.